Hi, everyone, and we're going to get started with the webinar here. Thanks so much for your time and for joining us today. The topic of today's webinar is why are communities taking over the insights world? And we'll have Ray Pointer from the new MR be presenting with us today, and he'll be talking about exactly why communities are taking over the insights world. And Ray is the author of the Handbook of the Online and Social Media Research, also author of the Handbook of Mobile Market Research, editor of Isomar's Book to Answers to Contemporary Market Research Questions, a course author for the University of Georgia's Principles of Market Research online course, the founder of New MR, and he spent over the last 35 years at the interface of research, technology, and insights, and is in wide demand as a consultant, trainer, workshop leader, and keynote speaker. Myself, I'm Dan Fleetwood. I'm president of Question Pro Communities, and I will be presenting today just to show you a little bit of the innovative features that Question Pro is doing, kind of a segue from what Ray's talking about with online communities taking over the insights world and maybe where that's headed, and then again what Question Pro is doing with some more of the innovative features and so forth. Today we will leave time at the end for questions, so feel free to use GoToWebinar's chat or question section and post your questions there. We'll be monitoring those, and we'll leave a good amount of time at the end for questions because I think we can get some good questions and some good discussion going around that. And without further ado, Ray, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks, Dan, and looking forward to presenting here and looking forward then to hearing your part in our joint Q&A session at the end. I think it should be a fascinating session. Perhaps I ought to head up with first one little bit of clarification. Why are online communities taking over the insight world? I mean, why are they taking it over in the sense that Starbucks are taking over the world? There is a Starbucks everywhere, not in the sense of War of the Worlds or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where everything else is being eradicated. What we've seen is a massive arrival of online communities. They've become really ubiquitous, and I think it's worth having a look at why that has happened. So here is the agenda that I'm going to run through. 15 years of growth, the sorts of versions of communities that we're looking at, and then the three drivers that have caused this change: customer centricity, cost, and speed. So 15 years of growth. I'm going to take you back to just beyond 15 years to a book that was fantastic at looking at so many things that were about to happen. 1999, the Clue Train Manifesto looked at the arrival of the internet and said, it's going to change things. It's going to create a flatter world. It's going to create a two-way world. It's going to create a collaborative world. And so many of those things have come to pass and have caused part of the reason why communities have taken off. 2002, for those of us old enough to remember, we had Friendster and MySpace. 2004, Facebook. And we all started to get that communities and interaction and discussion and sharing were a major part of what was going forward. And back in the early 2000s, what we saw was Communispace, followed by Vision Critical and Join the Dots, pioneering into this space, saying, you know what, we can use this as a research tool. We can actually find new ways of connecting brands with customers. And now, of course, it's a really crowded world. There's a variety of options all around the world. And how much has it arrived? I said taking over the world. Well, GRIT, the Green Book study that looks at the trends in our industry, for the last few years has had communities, online research communities, as #1 or #2 in terms of installed base. People are actually using it. It's about 70% of everybody who takes part in the GRIT study is using an online community in some way, shape or form. The only thing that even rivals it are mobile surveys, which in the last couple of years have been just a few points higher. So that was the first indication. Then sort of looking at the heavyweight of the data set, SMR's Global Market Research Report, the latest version, published in New Orleans just a couple of months ago, said that something like 5% of all market research spend is spent on online research communities. $1 out of every 20 around the world that's being spent on research is being spent via an online community. That's truly awesome. That is mainstream by anybody's stretch of the imagination. So what do we mean by a community? And this little diagram there is a two-dimensional drawing of a three-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional cube, which is my way of saying that there are four key dimensions that we need to consider. There are long-term versus short-term, and a long-term community is intended to be indefinite. When the vendor sells it, they're hoping this is going to be renewed year after year after year. And what we now see is that it's incredibly rare for a client to cancel an online ongoing community. They do change provider, they change platform, they change agency, but it's very rare that they cancel it. By contrast, a short-term community can be as short as 3 days, a week, typically would be 2 weeks to about 8 weeks, and it's there to tackle a specific research problem as opposed to changing the nature of the relationship between the brand and its customers. The second is this old issue of panel versus community. I've got a community, you've got a panel. So a panel is a really efficient way of sending out surveys to people, but it doesn't generate much community. A community is much more two-way, and it's collaborative, and it moves forward in a different sort of way. And in the early days, there were things that were very much a panel, and there were things that were very much a community. These days, most people are moving in the community direction because that's how you get ongoing engagement, it's how you get high response rates, it's how you get high quality information, and actually it's how you reduce costs. So the next factor is it a qual-only community? You may have a community of 100, 200 people, and you're doing projects with 20 or 30 of them to investigate different issues. Or is it a quant-only community? Are you simply doing surveys? Or, as is again the modern trend, are you doing a mixture of qualitative and quantitative? So you need 5,000 people in your community, but sometimes you're talking to 10 of them about doing a bit of ethnography, and another time you're asking 1,000 of them to complete a survey. So fourth dimension on that set is, are you full service? Have you gone to one of the leading agencies and said, right, we want you to create a community and run the community, and we will send you questions and you will send us business answers back? Or is it assisted service? So you are going to run some of those things on yourself. You're a client, you buy the platform, you can type in questions and surveys, you can run the discussion, but if it's tricky, you're going to ask an agency to help you. Or if you're going fully DIY, you've got the platform, you're doing all of the surveys, and you're doing it all yourself. And we see all of these options. Looking at it with a global picture, DIY, the home of DIY is definitely North America. The home of full service would be mainland Europe, Asia, where service is a much more embedded feature. But we see variations. We see full service in North America. We see DIY in Asia. Everything is everywhere. It's the balance which tends to change. So the three drivers. The first one, customer centricity. In the past, it was all about markets and brands. We used to measure the whole market. We tried to find out what was happening in the market. We would think it was all about the quality of the brand and the product. We would have a genuine product advantage. We would have better logistics. We could sell it at a lower price or something like this. And all of that has disappeared in the last 20 years. Now it's all about customer centricity because brands simply don't have an advantage, a sustainable product advantage. What they have is a relationship with their customers. So there's a fantastic book here by my friend Denise Drummond Dunn. If you take a chapter of that each week, by the end of a year, you will be a full-blown customer centricity expert. We're looking at how can we work with customers? How can we turn customers into our best competitive advantage? And in terms of an online community, what we see is that we have these different ways of doing the research. So We're using discussions instead of ad hoc surveys. Ad hoc surveys are like a one-night stand. You have to ask people their name, you have to, do you come here often, and you jump into over-personal things too quickly. With a community, you know all of those details. You're asking things, you have permission to ask things, it's an ongoing relationship. We're connecting with customers in a two-way. We have to listen. Having a community is not about sending out more surveys, it's about doing more listening. We're moving towards iterative thinking, leveraging agile approaches. I'm going to come back to a bit more about that in a moment. We're going to be looking at more use of crowdsourcing because there's this fundamental truth that A.G. Lafley pointed out at Procter & Gamble quite a few years ago now. There is more talent outside your organization than inside it. We need to leverage that knowledge, and we can do that via communities. And then we have longitudinal analysis. We've got these pre-profiled people, so we don't keep having to ask them the same questions. They're engaged customers. And we can track, if you take something as simple as NPS, understanding whether individuals move from a 10 to a 9 to an 8 to a 7 to a 6 over a period of time, or do they go 10, 1, 9 in a period, over a period of time? We know what aggregates do, but they don't tell us about individuals. Longitudinal analysis tells us about the paths that individuals take through that experience with the brand and what happens to their NPS score. So the next issue is cost. Customer centricity was the first. The second one is cost. Short-term communities generally don't have a big cost advantage. They are chosen because they're the best fit for a specific research problem. I need to redesign the website, so I'm going to get a community of people together. We're going to work on it for 2 months. We'll end up with a better design, and it's going to generate good return on investment. So it is funded and thought about in the same way that most cost things and qualitative things and quantitative things are done for a single project. But long-term communities are different. They do have a higher initial cost. You've got the platform, you've got recruitment, you've got setup, but then the marginal cost per project is much, much, much lower. In some situations, it can be approaching zero, because what you tend to have are communities that are engaged in terms of the general engagement, the feedback, the nature of the tasks, maybe a prize draw, but a prize draw doesn't become more expensive just because more things are happening. So we have this really low marginal cost. And most excitingly, we're beginning to see more organizations monetizing their communities. So media companies and marketing companies and telephone companies, all using their community to generate new business and to work with partners to generate income. And that changes the power structure around the insights team when they can sit around the table and say, here is how much money we've brought into this system. Changes their power, changes the way they're listened to. So cost has been a major driver of why communities have been so successful. And the final one of the three is speed. So we have a good friend over there on the right. I ask you, what does MVP stand for? And I listen, yes, I can hear it. Minimum viable product. It's all about agile these days. How can we move at speed? And communities help that process. It's like having a room full of your customers in the next room just down the corridor, so you can pop in and ask them straight away. Pre-profiled and incentivized. All the formats, the tools, the approaches, you don't have to think about what survey tool are we going to use, how we're going to lay out the questions. All of that is the same time after time, so it's all sped up. You've got your formats, you've got your templates, you've got your reporting structures. We've changed the situation where research used to be weeks and now it's days. And sometimes with some of the clients I'm working with, it's hours instead of days. And that really changes the way that you can use research iteratively. You can bring it right into the process. Because in the past, people didn't want to fly blind. They didn't want to just trust their gut. But research was frankly too slow. They had to commission it, they had to wait for the results. It would have slowed the whole development process down. Now, NPD teams are finding they can talk to customers every single day. They get the responses back that day or the following day, and they can do it at really low cost. And that's changing the way they approach their agile design and their iterative product development. As a consequence of those three drivers, the customer centricity, the cost, and the speed, the range of uses of communities has grown. And in the early days, we would say, well, a community is good for this, and it's good for this, and it's good for this. Now, however, what we've started talking about are the few things that it's not good for, because it's easier to list a few things you would not use a community for. So you would not use it for market measurement and media measurement. If you want to know how many people in North America eat apples, a community isn't going to help you. If you want to know how many of those people have seen advertising for apples, it's not going to help you with that. So that is the first category. Spontaneous type measurement. So when I say fruit, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? And if you're a member of the Apple Marketing Board's community, you're going to say apple. So spontaneous measurements. It doesn't, and this is perhaps the most contentious point, generally it works well with customers, it doesn't work well with non-customers. Now I'm going to put a couple of caveats around that. The first is that there are a lot of successful communities that look at employees. So communities work where there's a community of interest. So where everybody works for the same company, there is a community of interest, you can absolutely run there, and you can sort of see employees as customers of the business. We want you to stay, we want you to give us your time instead of your money, but it's that sort of relationship. There are communities of members, so you can have a community of trade union members, you can have a community of sports club members, you can have a community of fans of a sport, because there is a community of interest. Sometimes you can have a community of non-customers that reflects the market, so bakers, a community of men and women who like baking at home. Yes, you can do that, and it can be sponsored by a particular brand, but be general. We see the same thing for travel, we see the same thing for urban living. But generally, non-customers is not great. And let's think about this as an example. If we take American football, and maybe we've got the Dolphins, and we've got the Redskins, then somebody who is a fan of the Redskins will join the Washington Redskins and community to help that brand get better. But somebody who is a fan of the Miami Dolphins isn't going to join the Redskins community to help the Redskins get better. There is no community of interest. There's nothing in them for that. So if I bank with a specific bank, with Citibank, I will join the Citibank community to help improve the service I get. But I'm not going to join some other bank that I don't bank with, because there is no return to me. You could pay me in the short term to do that research with a big enough incentive. But in the long term, you are not going to get people who really have no relationship with your brand talking about your brand. So it's not great for non-customers. It's not great for brand and ad tracking. But what we are beginning to see people using them for is customer experience tracking. So tell me every time you see some advertising for my brand, tell me every time you see some advertising for my competitor brands, what else did you notice about it? Did you think it was good? It was not so good? If we're doing a media study, what do you think about the new talent? What do you think about the storylines? All of that sort of experiential tracking is great with the community. And we're seeing more and more people start to do things like mystery shopping via their community as well. So that's what's happening now, but it's incredibly dynamic. Things are changing quickly. So where do I see things going? First of all, we've had this for a while, but it's beginning to really take off, linking communities to other data. So adding some information about saying what size of customer are they? Are they somebody who buys a lot from us, or they buy only a little bit from us? How long have they been a customer of ours? But starting to put in more passive data, linking it together with social media information, so we get a richer and richer picture about these people. We're seeing the beginning of more automation and AI, and in particular, people starting to use things like chatbots. So one of the limitations when you have a discussion is it takes time for the moderator to have all of those discussions. If you've got a community of 50,000 people, you have probably got 3 community managers dealing with queries, doing with motivations, helping with newsletters and all of this sort of stuff. We can do more of that with automated tools in the near future. We're going to see larger communities. At the moment, 50,000 or 100,000 is a pretty big community. I think we are going to see more and more people trying to empanel their entire customer base, particularly if their customers do almost all their bookings online. So if you talk about a lot of airlines, nearly everybody who buys a ticket from you directly is buying it online. You have that sort of information. See all of those people as a potential community. How can we leverage that? How can we engage those people so that we can treat the whole of this process as part of the wider business process? And that's going to lead to a blurring of market research and marketing, because what I'm beginning to see some companies doing a lot of, particularly in Asia, is looking at developing community members as brand advocates, people who will promote the brand, people who you can send some samples to who will distribute them to other people. It makes massive financial sense. It makes massive business sense, but it's a real challenge for the industry and the trade bodies' code of ethics. They're going to need to rethink them, reorientate them, perhaps shift the balance so it's down to members deciding what's right and wrong rather than trade bodies deciding what's right or wrong. But that's going to be quite an interesting situation as we go forwards. So with that, I'm going to just sum it together in the big picture. Communities are mainstream in many verticals: retailing, service industries, media. They are the norm. You really do not want to be the last company in your sector using a community. The 3 drivers are customer centricity, cost, and speed. So if we take just the cost, we found a few years ago that people for the same budget could do 3 times as much research. Now that tends to be 6 or 10 times as much research, because there's a lot more automation, that a lot of the platforms have become cheaper, the processes have become better. So there's a really big cost advantage to people who want to do a lot of research. And in the future, communities are going to be bigger, they're going to be linked to big data, and they're going to use artificial intelligence to make them more productive and help us administer those large communities linked to big data. So there's my whistle-stop tour through the communities and why they're taking over the world. And with that, I'd like to hand you back to Dan.
Great, thanks, Ray. That was really interesting. I think a lot of great points were made. I know I have some follow-up questions, I think, for you directly as well. So I don't know if we can get to them in this webinar, but I'll definitely be pinging you with some questions. But well, that was great. I really want to kind of piggyback on what Ray was saying in terms of some of the innovation and different things that communities are good for. Everything Ray mentioned was great information and is definitely applicable to the way that Question Pro communities approaches how communities should be handled. So right now, I just want to talk to you about 3 kind of different innovative things that Question Pro is doing to kind of push the boundary and keeping communities driving forward. Certainly we have all of the traditional features from sending out surveys, polls, idea board, and so forth. Actually, idea board is one of the things that I wanted to mention here as one of the more sort of innovative features. So, obviously we're all humans. We all come up with ideas that we think are great. Oftentimes with brands, we don't have a way to really get that idea into the brand directly with someone who matters. And really the idea board that we have helps to solve that. So it's more of an ideation engine where if you're a member of a community, or if you're not, as I'll allude to with social listening here, you can give your idea that you have about a particular product. Say, one of my favorite examples until Amazon actually did it here was using drones to deliver packages, and I see that they just successfully had their first drone flight, which is interesting. But that was an idea that I had, sort of, and it got adapted. But I didn't have anywhere to kind of pitch that idea or give that idea with, a community with this idea board. I would have that. And I'll show you some examples here in a moment. And then segueing into that, we're doing more with social listening. So with Twitter, we have an integration where users can tweet at a particular brand using a specific hashtag, and it'll automatically roll up into the idea board and we'll invite that user to be a part of the community. So it's a two-phase engagement strategy and also idea sharing. We know that 77% of users feel more positively towards a business after receiving a positive response from a company. So this helps in doing that on Twitter. Also, as I'll show you, there's an automated response that will go out as well. And then further pushing the boundary is our newly redesigned community app. We have Survey Swipe right now, which is our legacy community app, but we're really going full steam ahead on the app module. And as we all know, mobile is the future. And as Ray mentioned, it's aside from communities, one of the top growing trends in the MR space. So it's definitely something that we want to stay ahead of the curve on. So with the idea board, members can post ideas. Pretty simple there. This is the next couple points is really where the magic happens, so to speak. Other members can then vote and comment on the ideas. Those popular ideas bubble up to the top of the list, so it's easy to see which ideas are gaining the most popularity. And then these ideas can also be shared on social media. So separate from the social listening, this is if I come up with an idea in my community and I want to let people know about it, I can easily share on Twitter and Facebook that idea, and it'll get posted to Twitter or Facebook, and then other users can see that idea and then also join the community and comment on it. And then sort of an innovative feature is that the community manager can then update the status of the idea, whether it's active, whether they decided to complete that idea and put it into production, so to speak. So really that two-way feedback that members are getting on their ideas. Here's an example of what an idea would look like. So in this particular example, someone had an idea about affordable wood-fired home pizza kit, and they were able to post a picture of kind of what they wanted it to look like. They're able to put a short description, and then other members can go in and vote this idea up or down. So kind of segueing into that, we also have the social listening, which is a new feature. So you can integrate your company's Twitter account with the community that you have in Question Pro. And this will allow both members and non-members to tweet at a company using a predefined hashtag. So this can be a campaign that companies are running on Twitter, where if you have an idea, post it on Twitter, tweet at us using this hashtag, and we'll follow up with you. It's a great way for both engagement and to show that customer centricity that, again, Ray was alluding to earlier. It helps with that full circle approach. So it's real-time feedback, and definitely helps out with ease of use and also ease of access, as the idea will then automatically get added to the community. And then from there, members can vote on the idea and give feedback. So you get that crowdsourcing aspect of it as well. So the first step here, you can see that I tweeted at Question Pro, adding AI to surveys would be a really cool feature, hashtag idea. And then you can see the reply down below where Question Pro followed up, and this is an automated response. Thanks, Dan. We've added your idea and feedback to the idea board, and then I can click that click that link, and then I see this screen where that idea was added. Other members can then see this idea, go and vote it up or down, and so forth. So that is really what the social listening is. So it's a great feature that that we now have enabled. Likewise to that, we also have this is the new community app. So just wanted to spend some time on some key features here that sort of differentiate this with even our current platform. Is there's a user or activity feed where, similar to if you go to Facebook or LinkedIn or even Instagram, you have your main feed where you can see activities, people post things, they post pictures, they post different types of media as well. And this is where the user can see all that inside of the community. So let's say, I post a new topic, I can see that topic in my user feed, and then others can see that topic as well. So Similarly, if it's a news article or a poll or a news survey, everything is in this one continuous user news feed. Another key thing is we allow for distributing messages dynamically. So the messages can go into that user feed. You can also send out a push notification that to particular members, and this has been key with some of our current customers is they wanted this to be able to reach people on mobile and have that immediate feedback. So this is where they can push that out, and then it will also show up dynamically in the app as well. There's a points and leaderboard, as we know people are competitive by nature and drawn to these incentives or rewards. So there's a leaderboard where you can stack up, and part of a engagement strategy or also strategy in a community in general as well is to really have a point system, and this helps with that. Furthermore, there's levels or gamification, and then with each level unlocks different features. Like if you want to allow your community member to post a poll, what you can do is they have to get to a certain level before they sort of unlock that feature. So it's an incentive to keep doing different activities in the community until they can get to that certain level of gamification. In addition, another key feature is the refer a friend, or be able to share the app. So you can continually grow your community through the app. It can either look at contacts, whether that's on the phone, or also Twitter and Facebook contacts as well if you want to invite them in that manner. And then, alluded to this earlier, there's also a quick polling feature as well where you can quick poll your community, and also other members, if they're at a certain level, can send out a quick poll as well. So just to give you a little bit of what this actually looks like, you can see the first shot there is the user newsfeed that has the poll feature. It has some different notifications of how users are responding to the number of polls to help show that it's an engaged, active community. And then also it has different things like different topics and so forth. In the second screenshot, that's the points leaderboard. A couple of key things here are you can see the different level that folks are at with denoted by the different colored trophies. Along with, you can see that their status has moved up or down with the green arrow and the red arrow going down as well. So this helps drive that competitive nature in people, and also helps then with engagement as well. And then the third screenshot there is a discussion feature that we have in the app itself, where you can do an online discussion with a specific group of your members, and then it can be a certain segment. So let's say, again, using the pizza community as an example, you can only, let's say you wanted to get a group of 12 people that have like take and bake pizza. They go to their take and bake, they bring it home, they would put it in the oven and bake it themselves. And you only want people that do that specific thing. You can filter your community by that, invite them to this discussion, and then have a discussion around that. So this is really kind of a powerful feature because they can do it on the go with this discussion module. And with that, I just want to say, again, thank you to Ray for his time, and hopefully you were able to learn a lot of interesting things with this webinar.